Have you ever been listening to a piece of music and just wondered, how does it do that? How can it feel so perfectly mathematical, like a perfect equation, but also so incredibly free and emotional at the same time? Well, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating framework called Ouroboros music theory. Think of it as a decoder ring for the very soul of music. So here's our game plan. We're going to break this down into 5 parts. First, we'll hit the big picture, what the theory calls the cosmic jam. Then, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the core tensions that really drive music forward. After that, we'll check out the composer's toolkit for wrangling those tensions, see how the whole system innovates, and finally connect it all to the future with a little help from AI. All right, so let's jump right into that fundamental puzzle. How can a piece of music be a fixed, written score with these unchangeable laws of acoustics, and yet, at the same time, be a living, breathing performance that's totally different every single time it's played? That's the central question this whole theory, let's call it OMT for short, really sets out to answer. Now, this is where the theory gets really cool. It looks at a piece of music not just as a bunch of notes, but as a complete, self-contained universe, a cosmic jam session, if you will. Inside this little universe, every single thing, from the physics of a vibrating string to the chills it gives you, is all interconnected in this endless loop of cause and effect. And this slide, wow, it just lays it all out perfectly. This is the core conflict. On one side, you've got the static nature of music. That's the written score, the physics of sound, those predictable structures like a sonata you'd found in a symphony. But on the other side, you've got its dynamic nature. Think about jazz improvisation, the subtle way a performer might speed up or slow down, their unique interpretation. The entire theory is built on this beautiful tension. Okay, so you've got this big conflict between the fixed and the flexible. But how does that actually work? Well, the theory breaks that one big tension down even further. It says there are 4 specific dualities, these opposing forces that are constantly at play, shaping every piece of music you've ever heard. You can really think of these as the gears of the machine. And here they are, the big 4. Form versus flux, well, that's what we just talked about, the score versus the live performance. But then you've got these other 3, unity versus multiplicity, known versus unknown, and cause versus effect. This is the engine room of music right here. These are the fundamental push and pull forces that every single musician navigates, whether they even realize it or not. So let's take unity versus multiplicity. I want you to imagine a really complex piece by Bach. You've got all these different melody lines moving and weaving around each other. Sometimes they even seem to clash. That's the multiplicity, all the separate parts. But somehow, miraculously, they all come together to create one single powerful piece of music. That's the unity. And the magic, well, the magic is in managing that tension. Next up, we've got the known versus the unknown. This is kind of like the head versus the heart. We can measure pitch, we can analyze rhythm, we can calculate the exact mathematical ratios of chords. That's the known. But why does a certain chord progression make you feel nostalgic? What was the composer really trying to say? That's the mystery, the unknown, and it's what gives music its incredible power. And finally, cause versus effect. You know this one. You can feel it in your gut. The theory calls it the cadential engine, and it's what creates that forward momentum. It's that feeling of building tension, the cause that just begs to resolve back to that stable, comfortable home chord, the effect. That cycle of tension and release is what makes music so deeply satisfying. Okay, so we've got these 4 big tensions constantly at war with each other. The big question is, how does a composer actually deal with them? How do you control them? Well, the theory gives us a toolkit. 4 strategic pillars or lenses that are used to manage and harness these incredible forces. First up is symmetry. This is the pillar of order, the architectural blueprint for the music. Think of it like a musical mirror. A composer might play a melody backwards. That's called retrograde, or flip it upside down, which is inversion. What they're doing is using symmetry to create a balanced, predictable, and mathematically elegant framework. Next, we have balance. Now, if symmetry is the architecture, balance is the force that keeps the building from collapsing. It's all about keeping things stable. It manages that constant tug of war between consonance, which is stable and pleasing, and dissonance, which is tense and edgy. Balance makes sure that every moment of tension gets a satisfying release. Our third pillar is unity. This is the drive for purpose. It's that feeling you get when every single element in a piece, the melody, the harmony, the rhythm, is all working together towards one single goal. Composers use things like repetition and developing a theme to get this effect, making the music feel absolutely complete and whole. And finally, we have my personal favorite, and maybe the most important pillar for innovation, paradox. This is the engine of change. This is the creative fuel. Paradox is when a composer deliberately breaks the rules. Think of composers in the 20th century who embraced atonality, basically throwing out the rulebook of harmony. Or modern artists using microtones, the notes between the keys on a piano. This is the force that keeps music from ever getting boring. So now we have the tensions and we have the tools to manage them. Let's look at how this whole system actually moves, how it evolves. OMT maps this out in a series of higher levels that show how these forces drive everything from a single jazz solo to entire musical revolutions. Now, we don't need to get bogged down in every single level here, but this table just shows the progression so beautifully. You can see at level 5, the pillar of balance helps a performer adapt and improvise in real time. But jump to level 6, and it's paradox that drives innovation and creates whole new genres. It scales all the way up to level 9, where unity helps define the ultimate aesthetic, even the ethical purpose of a piece of music. Now, I know this might all seem incredibly abstract, but here's where it gets very, very practical for the world we live in now. The theory argues that to manage the mind-bending complexity of these higher levels, we're going to need a partnership between human creativity and the raw power of artificial intelligence. And this is how it could work, through something called the cognitive spiral. Step 1, the human composer provides the spark, the creative vision. Step 2, AI amplifies this, mapping out all the complex possibilities and generating variations a person could never dream up alone. Step 3, the human applies their insight and taste, making the final artistic choice. And finally, the whole process repeats, creating this incredible learning loop. The key is, AI is here to enhance our creativity, not replace it. So, if you take one thing away from all this, let it be this idea right here. True artistic freedom isn't about having no rules at all. It's about understanding the rules, the constraints of the system, so deeply that you can strategically break them, bend them, and deploy a little bit of chaos with purpose to create something the world has never heard before. And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating and maybe even a little unsettling question. If music, and maybe all creativity, really operates within a system of tensions and tools just like this, does that mean we could actually use this framework to engineer the next great musical revolution? Something to think about.